One. Hey, Chargers fans, welcome into another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. We're pulling double duty today, uploading this one onto our YouTube channel and as an audio podcast format for you guys. Well, we're here obviously to discuss the big news from the Chargers today that they have moved on from Anthony Lynn, citing in their press release that they want to become more innovative as they have in other areas of their facility. Tyler, Alex, thanks for joining me. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's been 24 hours and we're back. So
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll have a couple other emergency podcasts through the coaching search. But yeah, today was a big day. I said it was 80-20 that Lynn was fired last night. Just want to point out that I've been right for the last month. No one's going to give me credit for it, but okay. Some people on Twitter, for example. I think it was pretty expected that Lynn was going to go. It was, obviously I thought it was more interesting just, what the candidates would be. And we got certainly an eclectic list of people today.
Yeah.
Some of the names I thought were fun, some of the names I thought were not so fun. I think out of the real candidates, I kind of wrote a Bolt Beat article about this today as well, going through which are the most likely. To me, the three candidates that you go to from day one that seem like they had the most realistic chance at the job are Dable, Eberflus, and Arthur Smith.
And I could absolutely see that happening. And they have requested interviews for all three, so that'll be wonderful. Today, I'm doing fine. I woke up this morning. I certainly thought Lynn was going to be fired. I was not in the 80-20 like Alex, but of course, Alex is right. And please shout him out on Twitter. And it almost felt like good to reflect on Anthony Lynn as just a good person. Yeah. I know, like him being fired, I wanted him to be fired, and that does suck. But it was nice to see a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of the players, a lot of the media come out and say very nice things about him. So, while it's a rough time for him, I'm sure being fired is never fun. The fact that it just seems like he kept a lot of really good relationships with a lot of different people and touched so many people.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool. Like even on the way out, I could have a lot of respect for my head coach. So that was nice. As far as who they'll replace him with, we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this last night. Anthony Lynn, he's definitely was not the right man for the future, but I'll always remember his era, his tenure as the Chargers head coach in a positive manner because nobody wanted that job in 2017, and it was just kind of a lose-lose situation. It would have been easy for someone like him to come in and you have the built-in excuse. You don't have a home field advantage. You're dealing with a transition era. You're dealing with an old roster that didn't have a lot of cap space. But he came in and he changed the culture and he did a lot of positive things from a leadership standpoint. I'll always remember the canceled scrimmage from this year that he did and had such a positive impact on this team. And at the end of the day, like half the battle of being a head coach is getting your players to respect you and play hard for you. And he did that. But, it is time to get someone that's more innovative and someone that can, be a master of X's and O's, because that's really what this team needs, in my opinion. But, I do feel a little bit bad for him. I just, I hope that he does well in his next stint, wherever he may be. And some people seem to think that he might be a possible head coaching candidate somewhere else. I have my doubts about that. But I hope he does land on his feet.
I think there are too many different coordinator candidates or head coach candidates out there for him to find a head coaching job this year. I wouldn't even expect that would just be very odd for me. The idea was floated around that he could be the Vikings offensive coordinator. I think that sounds great for him, considering Dalvin Cook had 356 touches. That sounds very much like an Anthony Lynn thing.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's a fit. Like if they're open and they're hiring, that seems to work because Lynn will get the ball to Dalvin Cook. So there goes Justin Jefferson's sophomore season. But oh well, wherever he goes, it'll be great. And I'd take him on. I could honestly see him doing well enough, let's say with the Vikings, to eventually getting a head coaching job again some other time, learning from his mistakes, perhaps putting together a better set of staff. And if I were a team that was betting on him getting another job later on, the 2 third-round picks you get for him being promoted to coach at a different spot, I believe, right? That's the rule.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, so that might be kind of worth it too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Anthony Lynn has a good future, headed for
Yeah.
him. I certainly think he'll get an OC job this year. I think the head coaching job is a little tight just because it seems like there's already so many candidates getting interviews. I don't
Yeah.
think he's going to get a head coaching job this year, but look, if he became the Vikings OC or somewhere else, I could see it working out really well. I think he was, really good OC towards the end of his time in Buffalo. And, he can, especially with Dalvin Cook, he can do that kind of establish the run mentality. Helps that Kirk Cousins is his quarterback if you want to do establishing the run because Kirk Cousins is not great.
Yeah.
So look, I mean, I think he can wind up with another job, and a lot of people seem to believe he's a professional. I believe that as well. And we've seen plenty of retread coaches who get a second chance, and it clicks that second time, right? Bill Belichick is one of those people, right? Who bombed in Cleveland and then went to New England and then succeeded. Not saying Anthony Lynn's going to be Bill Belichick, but we see plenty of coaches get that retread opportunity, and it just works for them. So I hope that's what's in his future. And I thought about this today. Just Justin Herbert is the big reason why the Chargers coaching job is so enviable, as well as Joey Bosa and all the free agents and the cap space and the draft picks, right? But one of the other reasons I think that it's enviable is because Anthony Lynn was so professional in his time here. There's another timeline in which the LA transition doesn't go as well as it does, maybe with another coach or another leader. So I think Anthony Lynn was the transition to this next phase of Chargers football. And I think his work in making that transition work was part of the reason this job is going to have 20 people clamoring for it, in addition to Justin Herbert and all the other stuff.
Yeah, it's funny that Justin Herbert is the reason that it's so attractive, but in a weird way, his development did force the Chargers' hand in firing Anthony Lynn, because I truly believe that their Super Bowl window is open right now.
Yep.
And we've seen in the past few years with other teams in the NFL that once you get the quarterback that you need on a rookie deal, the fastest way to get a Super Bowl contender is to go for it. So we'll have to see what kind of potential free agent moves or trades or anything like that would have to come from this. But I truly believe that if they get this head coaching right, that they could be Super Bowl contenders within the next 3 or 4 years. The other thing that came out, the Chargers are going to interview at least 10 people. Jim Trotter reported that one. Obviously there were some people who were a little upset about that, which I didn't really understand. But, I think that everything we're hearing out of the organization points to them being thorough and them, really being all in on this decision. They're not going to just get some Joe Schmo. It was reported that they only fired Anthony Lynn in the first place because they felt like they have a great chance of getting a top tier coaching candidate. So if they feel like that's Urban Meyer at his $12 million price tag, I think they would pay for that. I don't think that's going to happen because I feel like he's going to Jacksonville if at all. But if they feel like Jim Harbaugh is the right coach, I hope that doesn't happen. They will pay up for him. If they feel like Brian Daboll is the right coach, they will pay for him. So, that is the hope for all of us right now, is that Brian Daboll ultimately becomes the coach. All three of us really like him. I know Alex has a different number one, but, we'll have to see. What do you guys make of them potentially, casting a rather wide net in this situation?
I think it makes a lot of sense. This is, other than Jacksonville, maybe, and Jacksonville's a weird one because if Urban Meyer is like locked there, then Jacksonville's not really having an opening, right? It's just kind of potentially, based on the reporting, just filled by Urban. So that gives the Chargers, their chance to have 10 to 15, coaching candidates, line them up and see which one you like the most. Because after the Jaguars, I do believe the Chargers are the most enviable coaching position. So I think it's the great, great field, great choice. And I do agree that is probably why Lynn was fired. In addition to the Herbert and the pressure to, get a great offense around him. What people were irked by in that Jim Trotter tweet was that Jim Trotter said he believes that Dean Spanos will have a larger role in hiring the coach, which I didn't really have a problem with. I know Chargers fans go on about Dean Spanos all the time, with the move to Los Angeles and, he's cheap and all this, but um, I mean, owners should be involved in hiring the coach.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, I mean, not to the extent that like Jerry Jones is, but I think that owners should have a say. If he wants to compete for Los Angeles and make all these moves, I think that it just makes sense to have him involved. And it seems like he clearly feels like this is a moment where he feels like he has to be involved. So I personally have no problem with Dean Spanos being involved. And it makes sense. He was comparing it to 2017 where Dean Spanos had to figure out, what the stadium is, how we're going to make this Los Angeles thing work. So he was probably less involved in hiring Anthony Lynn then and just gave it to, John Spanos and Telesco to figure it out. So
Yeah.
Personally, I have no problem with either of those details. Cast as wide as the net as you want, get as many candidates as you want, and get the guy you think is the best guy. That's what I've been saying the whole time, and I think that it just makes the most sense to do that. I have no problem with the owner or Telesco or any of these people being involved, really.
Yeah, I don't have much of a problem with that, so long as the candidate they pick to hire is not someone that is just another puppet kind of guy. I believe if they hired Jason Garrett, for example, then we really know Dean Spanos might have jumped a little too far. But listen, this might be the coaching decision that gives the Chargers their first Super Bowl win.
Yeah.
They actually have a shot to do something really, not only just a Super Bowl, but to break into LA and open up their stadium. There's so much going on right now, and a lot of excitement. It sucks that Lynn was fired, but there's so much excitement around this team right now. And they bring in
Yes.
someone like Daboll or whoever. There's a lot of candidates I'd be excited for. Yeah, I would want him to be involved. Yeah, the Dean Spanos thing, everyone haha kind of laughs. But I don't know. Let them take as much time as they need and interview as many candidates as they have to. If it's 10 to 12, that's fine. So far, they've got 6 lined up, and I like 5 of them. And if they have to go through, we all know who the 6th one is. But if you got to go through a few more guys, that's fine. They haven't even discussed the law yet. They haven't discussed Meyer yet, or whatever college coaches they might be looking at. It seems like they're looking at NFL coaches right now, though. I don't think any other college guys have been announced. So, let them take their time, because I wouldn't let my best friend borrow my car, let alone, Dean Spanos letting just anyone pick the head coach of their billion-dollar franchise. Like,
Yes.
you want to have a little bit of a say. And it didn't seem like that Dean Spanos was going to be the guy picking. It wasn't like a Shad Khan situation like this morning where he says that, I'm going to have all the final say with the Jaguars and I'm going to make the decisions. And if you're coming in here, I'm still going to be the guy. Like, it didn't seem like that. It just seemed like a guy who owns $1 billion business.
Absolutely.
Who should be allowed to have some sort of say, maybe not final say, but a certain amount of say in this coaching decision. So it's an important one. The Chargers, within a few years, could actually win a Super Bowl. And so this is maybe the most important coaching hire since I don't know when. So, I understand that the coaching hire to get to LA to StubHub was important, but it's like, what kind of team was that? The transition is going to be weird. This is it. They're all in. They are in LA. They're in their new stadium, and they have their amazing quarterback. It's time. So if you need to take all the time you want, be an owner that has to look at all of this if you have to, whatever. The way they're doing it so far is fine by me.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. This is the time to go for it. And, I feel like the Spanos family has been, they've shown a good sense of urgency over the last few years. I know that people still think of them as this cheap family and Dean as this cheap owner, but Joey Bosa is the highest paid defensive player in the league, and Keenan Allen is a top 5 receiver in terms of salary. And, Austin Eckler has a high salary and all this stuff. So I think that they're going for it. I think that they know that this coaching decision is the most important decision of their franchise probably ever, like Tyler was saying. So in terms of when we might see this coaching hire happen, I would expect it takes at least 2 weeks. They have to get the interviews done, first of all. Like, this is the 6 names that we've heard. They've just requested to interview them. They have not done any interviews yet. The Falcons just barely did their first 2, for example. So there's this really weird rule that the NFL has where any coach that is coaching this weekend cannot interview this week. but as soon as that game is over, they are fair game for interviews. So, Brian Dable, for example, cannot interview with anyone this week. But as soon as that game is over, he can interview with whoever he wants, even though they're probably playing next week. So, I think it's going to take 2 weeks at minimum. I don't know if either of you guys think differently, but that's just kind of what I feel like the timetable is.
No, I think it'll take about 2 weeks. I could see it before divisional round Sunday, maybe a little bit after that, maybe leading into conference championship week. So I think it'll be decided around then, because that's when you'll have, all of the playoff coaches and playoff coordinators really get their chance. Obviously, they're interviewing a couple of them, Arthur Smith, Brandon Staley, Brian Dable. So there's quite a few guys that, fall under that umbrella of coaches that are coaching this weekend, and, they'll hope to get to them next week. So I guess they can interview Jason Garrett this week and wrap that one up, because he's not doing much of anything.
Yeah.
But so I think they'll realistically get all these interviews done probably within 2 weeks, and then decide on a hire. And I'm sure these 6 guys won't be the only guys. I'm sure it'll be kind of a steady roll tomorrow. And these are just kind of the requested interviews, right? And we'll know about those pretty publicly, but I'll be curious to see the guys who are kind of behind the scenes. We've heard rumors of Meyer, Harbaugh, potentially doing some backroom dealings and all that. So they don't have to really request to interview those guys. They would just interview them. So there's plenty of other guys like that too at the college level. So I'll be curious to see kind of who are the other, let's say, 6 or 7 candidates that they interview in addition to this group they've assembled.
Yeah, I'd love to see who else they have on deck, because there are no college coaches here for the 6 that are listed. Is it a Meyer kind of guy? Is it a Harbaugh guy? Like you said, I don't know. How long would it take for them to negotiate that and talk about that and court those guys? I can't imagine that is too hidden for too long. At some point, you're going to know that Harbaugh, talking to LA, or Meyer's talking to LA.
Absolutely, yeah.
But however long it takes. If it takes 2 weeks, 2 days, or not 2 days, you won't get Dayball, but however long it takes is however long it takes, and we're not doing anything anyway, so who cares?
Yeah. So, for those who have not been paying attention or are just listening for the first time, they have requested interviews for 6 candidates. Tennessee offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, Indianapolis defensive coordinator Matt Eberflus, Rams defensive coordinator Brandon Staley, Giants offensive coordinator Jason Garrett. I can't even say it with a straight face, man. Panthers offensive coordinator Joe Brady, and Bills offensive coordinator Brian Dable. So I'm sure that list will grow. Like Alex mentioned, that list will probably grow up to like 20 people. And then, some teams will say, no, we don't want you to interview so-and-so, or, maybe that person is happy where they are. So I'm sure the requested interview list will grow rather large. But I think the wild card here for me is Rams defensive coordinator Brandon Staley, who frankly, he's really come out of nowhere. And I saw an article about a month ago that the league was viewing him as like the defensive Sean McVay, which makes sense considering that he is working with Sean McVay. But he is a Vic Fangio disciple, if you will. So he coached with Vic in Chicago and with Denver last year. He's in his first season as defensive coordinator for the Rams and in general. So I think that would be really interesting. He's considered a very detail-oriented coach for the Rams, and obviously he's done wonders for them. I mean, I know they have Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, but the rest of their defensive supporting cast is hardly, death row. So he's making it work. They're the number 1 defense in the league. That to me is like the wild card of the 6, outside of just kind of the joke of Jason Garrett.
Yeah, I mean, I think Brandon Staley is an interesting candidate, where Wade Phillips had that defense a year ago, was not in a good place, which is, he ultimately got the boot, just kind of was resistant to change things. But, the Rams have kind of assembled a really great defense, and I think that Brandon Staley has taken good advantage of the tools he's had. So I like honestly, he's 38. I don't know if I see him getting a coaching job this cycle, but he might be one of those guys that's kind of a year away, right? And I kind of view Joe Brady in the same way,
Good call.
who the Chargers are going to kick the tires on that and see what they like, what they don't like, but I don't see the Chargers going for like a McVay type this time. They could. It wouldn't shock me if they went with Brady or if they went with Staley. But for some reason, I just see them going with someone who's older, a little bit more experienced, has a couple more seasons under their belt. So, and I don't see them going with Jason Garrett either. So I would really like to see what Staley could do, but I also don't see them, hiring someone who's defensively kind of oriented. Although I would love to see it if they did. I've been in support of hiring someone who's kind of defensively oriented, like a Jack Del Rio type, or someone who's just really, just grounded in defense as a whole. Even though you have Justin Herbert, I don't think that means that a defensive coordinator coach can't work. So that was ultimately kind of my take on it. So if they wanted to go with Brandon Staley, I would be fine with it. Joe Brady, I'm a little bit more skeptical of this year, but ultimately, I would be fine with either of those two coaching hires, even though they're sort of the wild cards in terms of age. And also, speaking of Jack Del Rio, he opened up at plus 1,200 odds today. He has the same odds as Jim Harbaugh. I can't believe it.
Yeah. Staley, this name definitely came out of nowhere for me. I
Yeah,
certainly
it
didn't
really
think
did.
that this would. I could see it making sense, but it's not really a name that I would have considered before. He's a former like outside linebackers coach for the Broncos and Bears, which I didn't know you had a specific outside linebackers coach versus just a linebackers coach. But anywho, this year they played the Cowboys, the Eagles, the Giants, the Washington football team, the Niners twice, Chicago, Miami, New England, and the Jets. I would like to see him have a better defense for a couple of years or 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Going through that gauntlet of 10 teams isn't really all that much to me. And the other guys they faced are guys in the division where, you kind of throw everything out and you're very familiar with those opponents and you can maybe just be better against like the Seahawks or the Cardinals. So, good job for 1 year. Absolutely. You can't take that away from him. I just think that's a little bit too early. Same thing for Brady. Whereas a guy like, Dable, even a guy like Tube, guys who would be first-time coaches or head coaches, they at least have a lot of years under their belt and have shown consistently for many years. I mean, Dable only 3 years, but still that's more than one. So for, Staley, Brady, I wouldn't hate them. I wouldn't hate those ideas. It's just a bit more of a gamble when they're so young and so inexperienced.
Yeah, absolutely. And, defensive success is so hard in this league to sustain. And so I think him, doing this again next season, I think that would pay
Sure.
dividends for him individually. So I just think, if the goal here is to innovate and to really bring in a guy that could take Justin Herbert and everybody around him to the next level, I think you almost have to go for an offensive coach. The one exception for me is Robert Salah, because he is going to bring the Kyle Shanahan system with him. He's bringing Mike McDaniel or Mike LaFleur with him as his offensive coordinator, excuse me. So I think that really is my one exception in terms of defensive head coaches. Matt Eberflus, he's a fantastic defensive coordinator, and he's had, very palpable proof and evidence of developing players. And what he's done for Xavier Rhodes this season, for example, is a shining star on his resume. And, the idea that he could come in and resurrect the career of Chris Harris or Casey Hayward or both, like, that is definitely very possible. But, then you're diving into who is he bringing with him as offensive coordinator? Are they really going to have an innovative offense with a defensive head coach? Like, that's just kind of the doubt that I have in terms of hiring a defensive minded head coach, because even though Anthony Lynn wasn't defensive minded, he basically was, like, with how conservative he was. So
yeah.
I just don't want a conservative head coach. And thankfully it seems like the Chargers don't either.
I mean, speaking of defensive coordinator interviews, we want to talk about Gus Bradley interviewing for the Raiders job. I
Oh
mean,
man.
oof, what a
Why?
disaster that's gonna be. You see, the thing is, I actually like Gus Bradley, but I'm like,
Yeah.
why is he interviewing for the Raiders job?
No.
That just
I
seems
think that
so
Gus Bradley has been, I don't want to say underrated, but I mean, look at all the injuries that they had this year, and the
right.
defense was mostly fine. But his scheme relies on talent, and the Raiders have none on defense.
Yeah. I was just so confused as to why they would really want him. I was just confused in general as to what the Raiders are doing on defense as a whole. Like that just seems like such a mess on their team right now. But they're still going to try to build it out. As far as going back to the main coaching candidates, I think Eberflus is interesting because I think if he wants to, could bring over Marcus Brady, who's the Colts QB coach. So it would surprise me if he brought him over as an offensive coordinator type. And then you have Brian Dable, who can bring guys from Alabama or some of the other places he's been from Buffalo. He could you also Arthur Smith, who can bring people from places. So I really think they'll have guys that are able to set up pretty good staffs no matter what. But yeah, so I mean, from day one, the real coaching candidates that I viewed from it were Arthur Smith, Dable, and Eberflus. I think that Brady could have a chance, but it would require kind of a lot of trust in such a young guy. And for every Sean McVay, there is a Josh McDaniels or someone who was
Yeah.
way in over their head.
Yeah.
When they took over a head coaching job at a young age. So I think those three are the guys from day one. We'll see who we get on day two. But yeah, I really like all of those coaches. Out of those, I think Smith is my preferred favorite, with Dable a close second.
No, it's a good call. As far as the coaching staff under whoever the head coach is going to be, it seems like the Chargers are placing a greater emphasis this time around on who those coaches are. And if you're a head coaching candidate, you need to bring to the table a good, trio, I guess, of guys that you're going to have working underneath you.
Yeah.
I guess, they're one of the things that they were not so happy about with Anthony Lynn was his loyalty to coaches. I would assume that specifically means George Stewart. It wasn't Wisenhunt, but I'm imagining it was basically just George Stewart. So
Yeah.
whoever you bring with you, whoever they bring with them, that's really important. If Dable doesn't hire the best defensive coordinator, perhaps I'm not as bummed as if Salah doesn't hire the right offensive coordinator. If Dable comes in and he's just Brian Dable and he brings over a good offensive staff and the defensive coordinator just kind of okay, or maybe they just promote Milas. I don't know if Milas is coming back. I have no idea. Anyway, whoever they hire, I guess, is important. But I think it's more important for the defensive head coach to get the offensive coordinator right than the offensive head coach to get the defensive coordinator right. But we'll see. As far as Eberflus goes, cool. Let's do it. Like, that's fine. He's a little bit more experienced than the other guys. He has 3 years. Former linebackers coach. Obviously, he worked really well with Darius Leonard, and for Kenneth Murray to come out and have such a good year or solid year, all things considered. And for guys like Kaiser White, Drew Tranquil coming back, who knows if Perriman and Vigil are coming back. So if he can come, back and put something into this defense and work with those linebackers specifically, well, I think you have something. But I would be interested in hearing what kind of staff he'd put together and what his plan, I guess, would be. Whoever they hire, by the way, I would love to hear their answer on what they're going to try to do to keep players on the field. For whatever reason, that has just always plagued the Chargers.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can, as a head coach, just come up with an idea. I don't know how creative these guys are or what worked for them. But the guys in the postseason right now are the guys that are healthy, and I would be really interested to hear what they'd have to say about how they're going to keep the Chargers on the field, because it's been rough for the Chargers and Chargers fans so far.
It really has, and I think that's a good point. And I think obviously they should ask them like what they're going to do to compete with the Chiefs, because obviously that's priority number one. In terms of Arthur Smith, I always get the same comment of like, well, he has Derrick Henry, and it's like, well, listen here, guy. Derrick Henry was sharing time his first 2 seasons in the league. You know, he had DeMarco Murray and he had Deion Lewis, and he was sharing time. He wasn't overly efficient, and he just scored a lot of touchdowns. He was very similar to Melvin Gordon. And so, yes, he has Derrick Henry, but he deserves credit for developing Derrick Henry as well as resurrecting Ryan Tannehill's career, in my opinion. They run the ball. Yes, they have a 2,000-yard rusher, but they're one of the most efficient passing offenses in the league. Their red zone efficiency is outstanding. Really, the Titans' biggest, concern right now is defense. They don't have a pass rush. They don't have a secondary. They don't have linebackers. Their defense sucks. So their offense has to score 38 points a week to keep up with other teams. And so to me, that shows that Arthur Smith is able to develop quarterbacks, which is the most important thing right now for this head coaching position.
Yep.
And B, he knows how to utilize his players and scheme up ways to, help them over the top. And, you look at what he's done with AJ Brown and Corey Davis, who everyone thought Corey Davis was a bust. He almost had 1,000 yards this season. So I love Brian Daboll mostly because of his history with quarterbacks. The history on Arthur Smith is a little smaller. He's only been a coach in the league for like 8 years, I think. And obviously only 3 as offensive coordinator. So, but if they hired Arthur Smith, I would be thrilled with that hire as well. I think he's a fantastic coach, and I think he is very deserving as well.
Breaking news. So the Chargers have requested an interview with Chiefs offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy per Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. So that is the 7th head coaching candidate.
There we go.
Makes sense.
I
mean, totally.
I mean, I have my personal doubts about him. I feel like he's just in a perfect situation right now with the Chiefs, and even if he does call the plays the entire time, he's got Andy Reid, he's got the best quarterback, he's got the best tight end, he's got arguably the best receiver. So I understand why he's the hot name right now, but I just have my doubts is all I'm going to say about him.
Nope, same. If he were a guy, Daboll is clear. Sean McDermott's a defensive-minded head coach, so that Daboll's running that offense. The fact that I just can't quite tell what Bieniemy is doing has me a little bit hesitant. As far as his pass goes, I'm not really going to consider that too much. The Spinus family might. At this point, I'm not. That's not really doing much for me. But yeah, I'm definitely skeptical of Bieniemy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Bieniemy could be a good coach in the NFL. It's just, he's been interviewed for a couple of years now as a head coach, and the main question every time has kind of been, the Office Space, what exactly do you do here? And he's had a tough time answering that question in interviews. So, I'll be curious to see how he attacks that question in interviews this time, and how he kind of differentiates himself from Andy Reid, from Patrick, having Patrick Mahomes, and what he can do with the team. So, I think, I certainly get why a lot of the fans like him. He's not my top coaching candidate, but if they wanted to hire him, I would have my doubts, but I'd be on board with it based on his track record. I think it's kind of hard to deny, but it's also just what exactly is he responsible for. But it's definitely a big name, and the list continues growing with a lot of offensive-minded head coaches. So I'm not too surprised to see his name on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. I just have my doubts. If they hired him, I would be very happy. I think he's well deserving to get that kind of chance. I just have my personal doubts. So let's talk about, briefly, because we did want to do this rather quickly, the college coaches. I think, obviously everybody knows about Jim Harbaugh. Everybody knows about Urban Meyer. Matt Campbell and Pat Fitzgerald were also high on the odds to get there. Pat Fitzgerald, of course, being the Northwestern head coach, and Matt Campbell being the Iowa State head coach. I think for me, I would prefer Matt Campbell of those two. They're both seeking NFL opportunities, apparently. So I think those are interesting names to keep an eye on. And then my dark horse college coach in terms of NFL head coaching candidate is Clemson offensive coordinator Tony Elliott. I think he's done a really fantastic job down there in Clemson, innovating that offense. And obviously, they've had an amazing stretch of quarterback play from Deshaun Watson to Trevor Lawrence. And I think that would be a very interesting hire. I think he's well deserving of an interview, but he might be more of an offensive coordinator target, which I would totally understand. And I would be definitely in favor of that for the Chargers for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pat Fitzgerald is a guy that's going to get a lot of looks. I don't know if it'll be from the Chargers, but what he does at Northwestern every year with, significantly less talent than a lot of Big Ten teams. I mean, he was in the Big Ten championship with Ohio State, playing really well.
Yeah.
And if it isn't for a 300-yard day from Trey Sermon, they may have a chance to realistically win that game. But, obviously Ohio State is just so much better than Northwestern from a talent standpoint. So just being able to stay in that game is really impressive, I think. And we just saw that they beat Auburn pretty convincingly as well, which is a SEC program. So I think Pat Fitzgerald has done wonders at Northwestern. As far as his actual coaching style, I'd be curious to see if he's kind of more offensive or defensive minded in the pros. At Northwestern, it was more about kind of grittiness and execution as opposed to having like a certain direction that he leans. So I'll be curious to see, what kind of happens there and what he pitches to teams in these meetings. Matt Campbell is definitely kind of an offensive-minded head coach, obviously from the Big 12. And so that would be kind of the direction he wants to go. I think his stock might have dipped down, the last couple of weeks of the Big 12 season, but ultimately I think he's going to be a guy that's there just because of how far he's brought Iowa State. Those are the college coaches that I tend to like. I know a lot of people focus on the Urban Meyers and the Jim Harbaughs, but to me, the coaches that I really like are those coaches who prove that, they can have some growth at the next level. They carried this team or they built this program, right? And that's the case for Matt Rule last year. And I think if you're looking for the Matt Rule of this year, the guy who's going to make that jump, it looks like it could be someone like Matt Campbell or Pat Fitzgerald.
Great points. I will certainly not turn up my nose at any college candidates, but I got straight A's this semester because I watched 0 college football games this season. So, whatever you guys say, I'm all for it. Go USC.
Hey, well, congrats on your straight A's, man. And
thank you.
I will say about Matt Campbell. So Iowa State, and Northwestern really, but Iowa State has been basically a bottom feeder in any conference. And so Matt Campbell just had his second 9-win season. Iowa State in their 100 and something year history has 4. So Matt Campbell in 4 years has accomplished a ton of good things at Iowa State. And I think he's well deserving. And, Alex mentioned the college jump. I think, the path has kind of been laid out for NFL teams. If they're a rebuilding team, like tear it down to the shreds and you need that guy, that's kind of where college coaches fit in, and so I could see, if Urban Meyer doesn't work out in Jacksonville, I could see the Jaguars going after Matt Campbell or Pat Fitzgerald. I think the Jets kind of very similarly, like if you're going to need a guy to tear it down and build it up from basically nothing, I think that's where you want to find Matt Campbell and Pat Fitzgerald. But I would be very happy if either one of them got interviews for the Chargers. Definitely would just be a little skeptical of, like Alex said, like what kind of style are they bringing to the NFL?
Yeah, just what style they're bringing to the NFL. Sort of what they're pitching in terms of management and personnel. I'd be very curious to see kind of what they would propose there. Obviously, they're not going to have control of anything. I don't think in the way that Urban Meyer wants, but what would they kind of like as their 2021 team, and what do they value? I think that'll be interesting, especially as free agency plays out and you maybe have kind of a coordinated effort between whoever the head coach is and Telesco and Spanos as well, right? So it would sort of be collaborative, right? I think those college coaches are sort of the ones that maybe have a chance at the job. I tend to think they'll go with one of the pro coaches though, like Arthur Smith or Brian Dable. So but the college coaches are interesting. I'm sure we'll see a lot more about Jim Harbaugh, who still is refusing to sign his 6-year Michigan extension.
Come on, man, sign that deal already.
It's so weird because I mean I guess the worry is like in 1 2 years they'll fire him and then give him a big buyout, but it's just like take the big buyout then. Like
Yeah.
I don't yeah that's so weird that he's not signing that. But yeah, it seems like that's in place. Um, the urban one is interesting to me from the standpoint of what if it doesn't work out with the Jaguars. He didn't appear on the Chargers odds list, just but I think that's because he's such a Jaguar certainty. So
Yeah.
I'll be curious whenever he meets with Shad Khan and the Jaguars kind of brass, what that meeting is like, and if he is in on the Jacksonville job or if he's out on it. That I think is a very telling moment for people that want Urban to the Chargers. If you want that, then I think that real meeting between Jacksonville and Meyer will determine quite a lot if he wants to, kind of stay in the NFL but pursue another job, or wants to go back to college, or if he takes the Jacksonville job. A lot of possibilities with him there.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, any other thoughts on the coaching moves today? Been a crazy day. Tyler and I were talking about this before. It's just it's exciting. It really is, and there's a lot of good things to come from this. And it's going to be a fun couple weeks to see who gets interviews and how this list compiles up. But any other thoughts on today's news, guys?
I'm just excited. And, I spend a lot of my Manscaped ad money on Chargers season tickets. And I hope that goes to good use this season because, it's not cheap. And if I had to watch another season of Anthony Lynn,
Yeah.
I just, another 8-8, 9-7 kind of team, like, whatever. But it can be so exciting heading into this season. I can't wait for you guys to see that stadium. We're all going to be there together at some point, and for, maybe the three of us or whoever, just to go have a beer and watch Justin Herbert and Brian Daboll take on the Chiefs, opening home opener.
Yes.
It just won't get any better than it'll be something special for sure. And I'm just really, really excited. I really can't wait. So however long this takes, I'll just kind of chill, simmer, whatever. And then when the hiring happens, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And man, next year's home schedule is going to be so much fun. They got the Steelers, Cowboys, Browns, and I can't remember the other ones. Those were kind of the first ones, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Alex, any other thoughts on the coaching news today?
I think my closing thought, we've referenced it throughout the show, but we haven't really talked about Jason Garrett. And I want to say as someone who's watched the NFC East for all of my life, I've watched Jason Garrett coach for about 10 years, 11 if you count this one. And he's really bad. I don't. People call Anthony Lynn conservative.
Oh man,
Jason Garrett is that to the nth degree, right?
He's the clapper.
The clapper. And I don't even understand why he got an interview. I would understand it if the Giants took some leap on offense or something, but they didn't. The Giants are 31st in offense. They're worse, than they were last year. It's just weird for me to see him on that list. I can speculate and say maybe that's just the Chargers doing him a favor to get him back into head coaching discussions or something. But just and I'm sure there will be other names that are ones we don't expect. But like Brandon Staley actually was too. But Garrett just came out of nowhere. What the fuck? If you hire Jason Garrett, I will burn Twitter to the ground. Okay, just stay the fuck away from him.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Staley at least was getting some significant head coaching buzz. There's been nothing about Jason Garrett. There was not a peep about any kind of team potentially interviewing him. So it caught everybody off guard. And we have to remember, and I have to do this too, these are just requests for interviews. This is just, the baby step of the process. And so, definitely got to take a deep breath sometimes. But, we'll see. And we'll obviously continue to keep you guys well informed of these decisions. And, we can't wait for the next couple of weeks. Can't wait to see who they choose. And, just got to buckle up and relax and hope they pick the right guy. And, we'll have to see how it goes from here. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Take care,
See ya.
guys. Bye bye.